You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can make this possible. U.S. Appeals Court has rejected a case challenging Harvard's affirmative action policy. The case was initiated by a group of Asian American students who felt the university's policy disproportionately benefited Black and Hispanic students. It was bullshit. Judge Sandra Lynch wrote the ruling for the appellate panel and found the university's limited use of race in its admissions practices didn't violate the precedent set by the Supreme Court. Edward Blum, president of Students for Fair Admissions, filed a lawsuit in November 2014. He was the one behind Abigail Fisher's case against the University of Texas in 2016. Fisher was the white girl who thought her whiteness was the reason she didn't get into school, saying, oh, but these other black students and Latino students, that's why. The problem is they then discovered there was white students who had worse scores than she did on the SAT who still got in. Wasn't us, boo. It was your fellow white people. Speaking of that, Gary, in California, there was a ballot initiative that would restore affirmative action there, but that was actually voted down. And people have been talking about that, that this so-called blue state would vote that kind of initiative down. I keep reminding people we have red states, blue states, but we also have a white America.
You know, it's important for us to recognize, and my lawyer is actually from Cali, and we had a conversation about this recently, and he's always telling me, you know, Cali is real progressive, but you got to look at that demographics, right? And when you look at that demographic breakdown, there are people there who want things to be progressive, but they want it to progress for certain people. They want certain folks to be out of the conversation as much as possible, and they don't want anybody who they feel like doesn't deserve the opportunity to be there or is unqualified to be there at a seat at the table to be there. And that's the same thing that's in that frivolous lawsuit, right? That you have, here's an Asian American who's basically saying, no, I don't believe that these black people deserve a seat at Harvard. Well, the reality is, sweet things, or whoever you are, we deserve a seat at any table that our academic excellence allows us to get to. And to try and push us out to say that we don't have a right to be here and we're only here because of affirmative action. Well, I got news for you. They got smart black folks in America that deserve seats at tables, that deserve opportunities at these jobs, that deserve the ability to compete in this economy the same way as anyone else. And the reason these laws were created is because the bias that exists in this country that is consistently discriminated against black folks and people of color remains in this country, and it has not gone anywhere. And no matter how much you try to fight against those things, until we build a political system, laws and policies that are equitable, not equality, that are equitable, that deal with the deficits that have been created through the systems that we have perpetuated for decades and centuries in this country. Until we build an equitable system, we will continue to have these conversations over and over.
And here's the deal: it was a 24-year ban on affirmative action, and again, it has had a huge impact on the issue of race in these schools. I mean, it is undeniable. And the fact of the matter, Amisha, until folks are willing to confront and we have our education segment a little bit later, but until they are willing to confront what's happening education-wise in this country for elementary schools, middle schools, and high schools, college is the end of the process. And so for all these folks who are like, oh, no, we're all equal when it comes to high school graduates, well, are we equal K through 12?
And I think that that's a very fundamental question, Roland. And as someone who spent the majority of my career in education policy, specifically serving minority-facing groups and communities, it's problematic that even to this day, and I would say that Democrats have a little bit to bear here as well. Even to this day, the idea that there is some kind of level playing field when it comes to college admissions or even making it to college is simply just unbelievable and quite foolhardy. When we think of K through 12, heck, when we think about early childhood education, we know the African American and Latino children start off at a much different path than their white counterparts, specifically because a lot of this funding comes from local property taxes. It just is what it is. And those property taxes funneled from blighted communities are never going to be able to fund adequately what is necessary for these students. In addition to that, we also know that when it comes to prime resources, not only in terms of the talent, but also in terms of having up-to-date books, having supplementary materials, having the opportunity to even be in some of these AP courses and other things and honors courses, they aren't even offered in the majority of schools that serve people who look like anybody on this panel. So I think that it's very annoying and it's disturbing to hear when you have these groups who fight so hard against affirmative action, which, by the way, has historically benefited more white women than it has any person of color. I think it's just problematic, because what we know is that to get to the college level, an African-American student is not only working twice as hard, they're also, for the most part, defying all things in their community to get there. And it's meaning that they're doing the supplementary things that aren't even offered by their schools. They are making sure they're doing the extra hours. They are developing an understanding of things that, for the most part, aren't even taught in the schools that they attend, because they have to be able to compete at that level. That means that despite having and coming from a lower quality education because they've been rifled with funding from state budget cuts and city budget cuts, they're still able to make it. That speaks to that student. That speaks to that student's family. That speaks to the community that wrapped their arms around that student and made sure that they were able to make it despite every single obstacle. What we should be doing is investing more in pre-K to 12. Because we talk about college so much, not realizing that the fundamental aspects of education start before a child can even form words. We need to do more to develop that part of a child's mind and framework before they get to college, before this conversation can really even take shape. And yes, a lot of it does turn back to funding. We know that in every city in America where there are diverse school districts, there is also somehow magically a lack of funding for the basic necessities of these schools. We need to make sure that the funding benchmarks are met, that we have high quality education, that we have teachers who are ready to teach to the future, that we have enough and adequate resources when it comes to technology, that we are promoting and giving a level of access to these young people to potential careers, not only the ones that exist today, but also the future careers of tomorrow, because that's what's done in their white counterpart schools. And sadly, a lot of our Black students are left behind, not for lack of trying, but for lack of the resources and lack of the capacity. That is a structural issue. And that's something that I think that we need to have more conversations about.
Michael.
You know, Roland, when we talk about affirmative action, brother, once again, America needs a massive history lesson, because, you know, there have been all types of stereotypes about affirmative action, and the only way African Americans got to college is because of affirmative action. Okay, well, you know, to my knowledge, you don't get graded on a black curve when you're in college. There's no affirmative action once you get to college when it comes to grades. Okay. And then they don't want to talk about affirmative action when it comes to legacies. So if your parent, if one of your parents graduated from this institution, you get some extra points on the application. Okay. Or your grandfather donated money to the institution, you get extra points on the application, or you may get in. Okay. Didn't that happen with Jared Kushner, the poster boy of white privilege, who said that if African Americans want Donald Trump's policies to work, they have to try harder. They have to want to succeed.
Or just have your daddy buy you into Harvard.
Have your daddy buy you into Harvard. So when they talk about affirmative action, it's only one way. On YouTube, Tim Wise, W-I-S-E, there was a debate about affirmative action, and you had some that were for and some against. The brother who was on the TV show, The Cosby Show, who played Martin Kendall, he's a conservative in real life. Okay, he was against, right?
Yeah, Phillips.
Phillips. He was against affirmative action. But Tim Wise went through and broke this stuff down, and he talked about with the University of Michigan, and there was a lawsuit. There was a white woman who sued against affirmative action here in the state of Michigan, and he talked about the application that you fill out in the point system. If you graduated from a high school in northern Michigan, up north, you got extra points on the application. Okay, And then when you look at the fact that you get extra points if you took advanced placement classes, AP classes. Well, a lot of the white school districts are more likely, in the affluent school districts, are more likely to offer AP classes. So when it comes to the point system on the application and how it's stacked against us, they really don't want to talk about affirmative action then. So one, America needs a massive history lesson. Two, we need to really clearly define the history of affirmative action, because as far as I'm concerned, white people had affirmative action for 246 years in this country, and it was called slavery.
All right, folks, back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just 1 moment.
It's time to be smart. When we control our institutions, we win. This is the most important news show on television of any racial background. Y'all put $2, $3, $4, $5, $10, $15, $20, $30 on this and keep this going. What you've done, Roland, since this crisis came out in full bloom. Anybody watching this, tell your friends, go back and look at the last 2 weeks, especially of Roland Martin Unfiltered. I mean, hell, go back and look at the last 2 days. You've had sitting United States senators today, Klobuchar and Harris. Whatever you have that you can bring to Roland Martin Unfiltered to support it, please do, because this information may literally save your life.
Watch Roland Martin Unfiltered daily at 6 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, Facebook, or Periscope, or go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered Daily Digital Show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com.